I want to ask you to elaborate more about the AIDS virus. So the AIDS virus is created in a lab at UCLA. For what purpose would they create something like that?
They were trying to create, according to the records that I got to see, and they were discovered by a Dr. Robert Strecker. I'm a nutritional doctor, got my PhD in nutrition. Dr. Strecker has like 4 doctorates, and one is in biochemistry and virology.
Right.
So what they did was they incubated these 2 diseases from both a sheep and a cow, the leukemic virus of a cow, the bovine, and the lymphonomic virus of a sheep. They put those 2 together and created a new kind of deadly biological warfare disease.
So
now, they did that.
Was that the reason for it? Were they trying to come up with a new biohazard, a new biological warfare?
They could have been the reason, but they put in their paperwork it was to create cancer. It was to force cancer in laboratory animals so they could study cancer.
Okay.
That is very suspicious reasoning to me, to come up with something
because
deadly
there's already lots of agents out there that will cause spontaneous tumor and cancers in rats.
Exactly. I mean, you can put cadmium in it, and you can have kidney cancer in weeks, overloading with cadmium. There are lots of ways. So this was a suspicious reasoning for me, to my thinking. But it was done. Dr. Strecker called his brother, who was an attorney, and said, "This is where it leads, follow it." So his brother checked the NSA, the War Department, and yes, that information had been sent to those departments, and it was allowed, it was given the green light to be used in experiments. So he found out the experiments were undesirables. They figured that in these particular committees that the undesirables were homosexuals.
Right.
Now, how could they administer this to homosexuals to see the consequences of this particular formulation?
Well, you just have to find homosexuals who are also intravenous drug users, and then spike the heroin or the speed or whatever they're shooting with some of this stuff, I guess.
No, you still can't get a good population that way. What they found was that in Los Angeles, New York City, Houston, and San Francisco, that 90% of the people who were being treated for hepatitis were homosexuals because they used a lot of drugs, damaged the liver. So hepatitis is a viral detoxification because there's so many chemicals in the liver, your bacteria from the liver can't clean it. So all of your hepatitises are diseases trying to reverse a toxic condition where the liver is about to stop working completely. When you get to hepatitis, that means your liver is in terrible shape. No bacteria can help you.
So you're saying they contaminated the hepatitis vaccine?
B vaccine. With this AIDS virus. And they injected, that's why 10% of the population in those cities who got AIDS were not homosexuals, they were heterosexuals.
Oh my God.
Then they went and put it in the smallpox vaccine. The U.S. government and the UK government donated hundreds of millions of dollars of smallpox vaccine to African countries. Then all of these do good meaning groups, go out and administer and going to save the world by giving all these vaccines to African children and everybody to save their lives, from smallpox. We're given this AIDS virus in the smallpox vaccine.
That's amazing.
125 million were donated. How many cases of AIDS were propped up in Africa within a year?
I don't know that number, but I remember it was like half the population.
95 million.
Right.
75 million people died. Then what the U.S. government and the UK government did, went to those countries and said, listen, we have, help for AIDS. We have chemotherapy, which is AZT.
Right.
We have chemotherapy that we can help your people with. We can help you stop this disease. We can treat your people. We'll bring the medical in, but you will owe us a lot of money. Now, they charged so much money that no way these countries could pay back. So when all was said and done, and all these people were dead, and very few people ever came through the AIDS without death, the U.S. government, UK government says, oh, you owe us this much money. If you can't pay it, you owe us your country's resources.
Wow.
So they turned over the country's resources to be run by the World Bank. So we took over, the U.S. government and the UK government took over 27 African countries with that AIDS hoax and inundation.
That's amazing.
It's just like they used a different kind of warfare to usurp another country's, resources.
Shocking.
It's like war, like, the Spanish, the Roman,
It's
the Greek.
but it's a stealth. They're waging a stealth war, because almost like a Trojan horse war, because they are being perceived as they're being invited in. They're being perceived as the saviors, but they're really the ones creating the problem so that they can come in and finish the job.
Absolutely. And if you read the book Confessions of a Financial Hitman, I think that's the title. It talks of this man who worked for the U.S. government and the CIA. They went in and, loaned great amounts of money to foreign countries, foreign governments that could never pay it back, and then would take over their resources.
Wow. Look,
that's the same thing they did with this AIDS incident.